80%. Just hold that number in your mind for a second. In the world of addiction treatment, seeing an 80% success rate for 6-month abstinence, it isn't just rare, it sounds absolutely impossible. I mean, when we're dealing with chemical dependency, numbers like that simply do not exist in conventional modern medicine.
And what makes that 80% so staggering is the contrast. Look at 35%. That right there is the 6-month abstinence rate for varenicline. You probably know it as Chantix. And that is widely considered the absolute best conventional pharmaceutical on the market for smoking cessation. Even first-line alcohol medications only produce a meaningful response in less than 30% of patients. So we are looking at this mystery treatment that literally more than doubles the efficacy of our absolute best medical interventions.
Well, here's the big reveal. That 80% treatment? It's psilocybin. Yes, the active psychedelic compound found in magic mushrooms. For a really long time, the medical community just totally dismissed it because of preconceived stigmas. But now, the scientific community is paying very close attention because psilocybin is producing results that, honestly, no pharmacologist ever predicted.
Welcome to this explainer. I am so glad you're here with us. Today, we're diving into the rigorous neuroscience behind exactly why this works, where traditional medicine just so conspicuously fails. We're going to break down the actual mechanics of chemical dependency, and we'll look at the hard clinical data driving what the FDA is officially calling a breakthrough therapy. Okay, let's dive right into this.
Section 1. How the brain gets stuck. The architecture of addiction.
To understand the cure, we really have to understand the problem first. Addiction isn't just a lack of willpower, right? It's a hijacked learning architecture literally optimized against itself. It's like a giant puzzle. Let's break down the 3 interacting systems at play here. First up, mesolimbic dopamine. This is your reward prediction circuit. Addictive substances trigger these massive, unnatural dopamine releases, basically teaching the brain to intensely approach the substance while everyday natural rewards just kind of lose their appeal. Second, the basal ganglia. This controls the habit loop. Early on, using a substance is a conscious choice, but over time, the dorsal striatum takes over, making the behavior totally habitual and unconscious. It runs way faster than your frontal lobe's decision-making capacity. And finally, the default mode network, or DMN. This constructs your self-narrative. In chronic addiction, the substance embeds itself right into your identity. You don't just crave a cigarette, you identify as a smoker. And you can't simply logic someone out of a neurological identity.
And this brilliantly illustrates the core problem with how we've been treating addiction for decades. On the left, you see conventional pharmacotherapy. It targets single systems, maybe dulling a receptor over here or blocking a craving over there. But on the right, just look at psilocybin. It acts as a simultaneous, multi-level interrupt. It doesn't just target one symptom, it hits the DMN, the dopamine circuits, and your brain's neuroplasticity all at the exact same time.
Moving on to Section 2, the multi-level interrupt, rewiring the architecture.
So how exactly does a single psychedelic compound physically and chemically disrupt these deeply entrenched addiction loops? Well, it starts with DMN disruption. Psilocybin's active metabolite, which is called psilocin, targets 5-HT2A receptors that are densely packed in the medial prefrontal cortex and the posterior cingulate cortex. That's basically the core of your default mode network. When it binds there, it disrupts the tight, self-referential connectivity that literally defines who you think you are. The ruminative loops just lose their coherence. That deep self-model that makes the substance feel like a core part of you, it temporarily dissolves.
Let's see how this multi-level approach builds across the rest of the brain's circuitry. First, dopamine. Serotonin and dopamine are tightly coupled. Psilocybin modulates the ventral tegmental area and the nucleus accumbens, essentially recalibrating the entire reward prediction architecture instead of just blocking it. Next is neuroplasticity. Psilocybin rapidly upregulates BDNF. That stands for brain-derived neurotrophic factor. This drives dendritic spine growth, physically creating this temporary unlearning window. It's a specific period of enhanced cortical plasticity where your brain actually has the capacity to construct entirely new, healthy response patterns.
Section 3. The clinical evidence. Unprecedented results in nicotine and alcohol.
Theoretical neuroscience is super fascinating, but the hard clinical data here is truly unprecedented. Take Matthew Johnson's 2014 pilot study at Johns Hopkins. Now, these weren't just casual, social smokers. These 15 participants averaged 31 cigarettes a day for over 30 years. Following psilocybin-assisted cognitive behavioral therapy, 80% achieved biochemically verified abstinence at 6 months, and even at 12 months, 67% remained totally abstinent. To put that into perspective, standard nicotine patches only hit about a 16 to 20% success rate, so this was more than double the best available pharmaceutical.
And the success absolutely isn't limited to just nicotine.
In a landmark 2022 alcohol trial led by Michael Belgenschitz and published in JAMA Psychiatry, the psilocybin group showed a massive 83% reduction in heavy drinking days. Now, they used an active placebo, diphenhydramine, which causes mild sedation, just to control for expectancy bias, and that group saw a 51% reduction. But the psilocybin group was also more than twice as likely to abstain completely from alcohol, with the positive effects actually increasing over a 32-week period. That's a real game changer.
Section 4. Why the trip matters. The phenomenological identity shift.
This is where the science gets incredibly profound, because the clinical success relies so heavily on the actual lived psychological experience of the trip. A successful quitter from a qualitative analysis by Garcia Romeo and colleagues put it perfectly. They said, "I realized I wasn't a smoker anymore. That wasn't who I was. The drug didn't just take the pleasure of the cigarette away. By disrupting that default mode network we talked about earlier, it literally dissolved the very self that needed the pleasure. It created a profound, lived shift in self-perception and identity."
Which brings us to a finding that is sometimes a little uncomfortable for hardline biologists, but the data is completely undeniable. The Mystical Experience Questionnaire, or MEQ, measures dimensions like unity, sacredness, and the transcendence of time and space. Across these studies, the magnitude of the mystical experience predicts long-term abstinence better than the dose, better than baseline severity, better than literally any other measured variable. The complete mystical experience is the exact mechanism by which that whole addiction narrative dissolves.
Section 5. Safety, Limits, and Future. Addressing the caveats.
Now, as incredible as this all sounds, we definitely have to remain rigorous. Let's confront the most obvious, glaring question your brain is probably asking right about now. If we are using a powerful drug to treat addiction, aren't we just creating a brand new dependency? I mean, is psilocybin itself addictive?
Interestingly enough, the biological data says no. Psilocybin produces zero physiological dependence. Unlike addictive substances, it is not a dopamine agonist, so it doesn't trigger that mesolimbic dopamine surge. Furthermore, it causes rapid tachyphylaxis. That means biological tolerance builds up in just 3 to 4 days, which makes compulsive daily escalating use biologically self-limiting. The safety profile is so distinct that the FDA has officially designated it a breakthrough therapy.
But there are strict clinical limitations here. Psilocybin is not some magic pill that just cures you while you sleep. The absolute crucial point is this: it requires structured therapy. Remember that unlearning window of neuroplasticity we discussed? Well, that window lasts for days or weeks after the dose. The drug simply creates the biological conditions. It's the active integration in cognitive behavioral therapy that actually fill that new synaptic capacity with recovery-supporting habits. And of course, rigorous screening is absolutely required, as a family history of psychotic disorders is a standard contraindication.
So where's this science going next? The frontier right now is tackling the deadliest epidemic we currently face, opioid use disorder, which claims roughly 80,000 lives a year in the U.S. alone. While current medications manage the incredibly painful withdrawals, they don't fix the underlying dependency architecture. Encouragingly, though, preclinical rodent models show psilocybin significantly reduces opioid self-administration, and Johns Hopkins is actually currently enrolling a phase 2 trial to see if this multi-level interrupt can restructure those deeply entrenched craving circuits in humans too.
Which really leaves us with a profound challenge. As neuroscience finally learns how to biologically dissolve the addict identity, how do we ensure this clinical breakthrough actually reaches the millions who need it most, rather than just becoming some niche treatment only for those with vast resources? It's a massive hurdle, for sure, but for the first time in decades, we actually have an intervention powerful enough to warrant the effort. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep asking questions, and I'll catch you next time.